Hello, and welcome to another episode of Candid Canvas, the podcast where we dive into the creative minds shaping art, business, and life. I'm your host, Julie Siegrist, owner and artist at Julie Annette Studios. Today, we're exploring one of the most intriguing aspects of creativity, the creative process. Whether you are an artist, an actor, a writer, a musician, or a chef, understanding your creative process can unlock new levels of productivity and fulfillment. So, what exactly is the creative process? And how can you take an idea from inception all the way to completion? That's just a little bit of what we're talking about today. At its core, the creative process is a series of steps. Some are conscious, others are subconscious, that take us from the spark of an idea all the way to a finished product. It's not a one-size-fits-all journey. In fact, everyone's creative process is a little different, but most processes involve similar phases: idea generation, incubation, experimentation, execution, and reflection. I'll be sharing some thoughts on each of these phases today, and I'll also be giving you a peek into my own personal creative process here at Julie Annette Studios. First, we have to touch on really the 0th phase, preparation. This phase comes before the idea even comes to you. This is the moment when inspiration first strikes, and it can come from anywhere: a conversation, a memory, nature, or even a random daydream. Sometimes you see a color of a flower, the swaying of a tree, or a painting that you enjoy the style of. You might have a conversation where someone mentions an ingredient for a dish that sounds intriguing. Or you hold a mug and think, I like the way this mug feels in my hand. Your brain holds on to those nuggets of inspiration and processes them in the back of your mind to form them into the spark of an idea for you. And now we can get to the first phase, inception. Some people refer to this as their aha moment or eureka. But inspiration does not always show up when we need it to. This is why many creatives keep notebooks, voice memos, or sketchpads handy to capture ideas as they come. In this phase, it is all about being open and receptive. Allow your mind to wander freely. Really relish this stage and research and explore. Read about artists that you find interesting. Read poetry. Listen to music. Watch films. Be outside and observe. And then we move into what's called incubation. This is when the idea simmers again, often in the background of your mind, when you absorb and process. You might not actively be working on it, but your brain is making connections, solving problems, and figuring out how to bring the idea to life. Sometimes stepping away from your work and doing something unrelated is actually the most productive thing that you can do. Do something that doesn't require much brain power, and it can give your subconscious time to churn. Spend this time meditating and marinating. There's no shame in the length of time that this stage takes. Don't rush it. Illumination sometimes hits us as an unmistakable spark, and sometimes as a quiet contemplative whisper. This is a good time to evaluate if this idea is worth pursuing. Does it hold up to critical thinking, honest questions, or the scrutiny of peers? This might be a period for gathering honest feedback and collaboration. Some good questions to ask yourself during this evaluation could be: has this been done before? How can I do it in a way that hasn't been done before? Will I actually enjoy this? And why does this idea or project matter to me specifically? Am I even challenging myself? The next two phases are where things get really fun and sometimes really challenging. Experimentation is where you start trying things out. Maybe you're mixing colors, sketching rough drafts, or writing down fragments of a melody. This is the part of the process where failure is not only expected, but it's essential. In fact, some of the best work often comes after a series of failures and revisions. I know I often have revised paintings that I've left sit for a while, and I come back and keep trying to make them better. And they often get better each time. And then execution. This is where the idea becomes reality, and you elaborate on the idea. You figured out what works, and now it's time to bring it all together. This part can feel like a grind at times, but it's also where the magic happens. Seeing your vision come to life is such an incredibly rewarding experience. It's when you put pen to paper, ink to canvas, and clay to wheel. The sweat, tears, and joy. Embrace it all. Finally, we end with reflection. This is the phase where you take a step back and evaluate your work. What did you learn through this process? What would you do differently next time? And how does this piece of work fit into the bigger picture of your creative journey? So that's a basic framework of the creative process. Now, I thought it would be cool to check in with some well-known international artists to hear how they describe their creative processes. Australian artist Daniel O'Toole says their process is working within a range of media to understand what truth is written in code, regardless of the materials being employed. I really resonate with that because I love it working within a lot of different mediums, and sometimes it is exciting to find what you can do with one medium that you can't do with another, and often one medium is best to represent the story that you want to tell. Jorif Graf, a digital artist from the Netherlands, says they're purely driven by emotion. My work is not intended to convey any messages or stories. Within my images, I intend to create an atmosphere and convey the feelings and emotion to the viewer that I felt at the time of making them. This is important for any artists out there because not everyone has the same intention in making their work. Some people work best by wanting to have their work relay a message to their audience. Some people work best with wanting to tell a story through their work, and other people work best by wanting to convey emotions, and that's what they want their pieces to reflect. And all of them really are so valid. Sri Lankan artist Sumili Piatisa says there are so many more talented artists that I follow online for inspiration as well. There's so much talent out there and so much that you can learn. It's important to follow, if you use social media, follow other artists, see what they're doing, see what inspiration you can take from them, see what you can learn from them, and that can help grow your body of work so much. And even if you aren't on social media, you can go to art galleries, go to shows, and really take it in and find artists that you gravitate towards. The hip hop artist Lil Uzi Vert said, I don't know. It's more of a reflex. I'm not thinking right now. There's nothing to really think about. Everything right now is all about being effortless. I'm in a mode right now. Let's do it. Whatever happens, happens. And not everyone can experience that stage of their creative process all the time. There, for a lot of people, it has to start with reflecting on their idea and really researching and evaluating, and it's possible to then get into a state where everything does feel effortless because you've already done the research and preparation for that project and you didn't even realize it. But that is such a fun space to be in your creative process when it really does feel like a flow and feels effortless and doesn't feel like as much of a grind. And those are the times to really enjoy, but that does not invalidate the times when it does feel like a slog to get through the project you're currently in. I think that there can be moments within each project where it's a bit of a roller coaster and you have those moments of pure inspiration, and then you also have to rely on your own dedication to get through to the end. And I think all of them are, by the end, when you're sitting looking at your project, I think even those moments then feel more worth it at the end when you had to really push through and you get to enjoy all of it as it comes. Jonathan Brooks, the chef and owner of Beholder, said he uses journals to capture ideas for dishes, draw shapes for cutting vegetables, or jotting down ingredients that he wants to combine. Then he draws and experiments on the plate. He buys 4 or 5 cookbooks at a time, and on his free nights, he'll sit down and look through every single page. He is also very inspired by literature and music. If you could describe your own creative process in 1 to 3 sentences, how would you describe it? And now that we've discussed the basic framework and heard some other artists' examples, I want to share my personal process with you. For me, the creative process often starts with wanting to push myself to stretch my creativity in new ways. Whether that stems from wanting to try a new medium or improve upon my existing skill set. Sometimes I want to paint something. Like right now, I'm using oil paints and focusing a lot on oil painting because I haven't done a lot of that since college, and I want to improve upon my oil painting skill set. And so I'm focusing a lot on that right now. I also at times have really focused in on acrylics or clay and sculpting or my ceramics throwing. And I wish I could do more of that, but getting studio time is not easy right now. And other times I'm really just focused on drawing, and I'm excited for Inktober, which is coming up. Once my initial idea is there, I'll start sketching or writing about it without any pressure to get it right, but just to get the concept out of my head and into a more tangible form. And then at times, I won't fully flesh out an idea until weeks, months, or even years later. Next, I'll spend some time thinking through how I want to approach the piece. Sometimes it takes me a while, and I'll go work out or read a book about something completely unrelated to give my brain space to sort through those ideas. There's a bit of an incubation happening there, and I might not be painting or working on it directly, but my mind's still processing it. And I often take notes in my phone on my notes app of little ideas that come to me or how I want to improve upon something so I can refer back to it later without forgetting it. I also sometimes do voice memos in my phone, but I don't often go back and listen to them because I don't like the sound of my voice, which is great that I am starting a podcast. And then the experimentation phase for me is all about playing with perspective or color. I'll often create in a number of mediums to test the direction that I want to go. There's a lot of freedom in that part of the process, which allows me to embrace my mistakes or happy little accidents. Sometimes a smudge or a color mix I didn't plan ends up completely transforming the piece, and I end up liking it more than what I had planned. When it comes to execution, I often set time aside to really immerse myself because I know I have to get into the creative flow and just ride that for as long as possible. It's almost a meditative state for me. I'll focus so much on the flow of the work. Sometimes I forget to do other things during that flow, but it really allows me to adjust things as needed by committing to seeing the piece through or committing to reaching a certain level on the piece that I wanted to get to before I step away from it. And I will allow myself pauses then during the execution um, process. And that allows me to have little mini evaluations during this stage to see if I like the direction the piece is heading. Sometimes I'll find myself liking the piece even more than before I stepped away, and that bolsters my confidence in it. Other times, I can realize what wasn't working for me and can then make those changes going forward. And then finally, after the work is done, I give myself a little bit of time away from the piece before I fully evaluate it, because then I can see it with fresh eyes. Every creative journey is different, but there's something universal about the joy and the struggle of bringing an idea to life. So, whether you're working on a painting, a novel, or a new business idea, remember that the creative process is all about patience, exploration, and growth. Something that's really important is recognizing your unique creative process. Everyone creates differently, and that's a good thing. Some people work best under pressure, and others need time to let their ideas develop slowly. When you understand your personal rhythm and the steps that work best for you, you can lean into that process more fully, making it less stressful and more enjoyable. Identifying the steps in your own creative process can also help you figure out the ways to make it more efficient. For example, if you know you get stuck during the incubation phase, you can start setting aside time for more passive activities that really encourage creative thinking, like going for walks or gardening or reading something completely unrelated to your project. These activities can help boost your productivity when you're back at the desk or in your studio. It's also valuable to consider how to make your process more enjoyable. Creativity should not feel like a chore. Ask yourself what elements of the process you love the most and try and structure your projects around them. Do you love the experimentation phase? Make more time for that. Do you get joy from the reflection phase? Incorporate journaling or discussions with others about your work. Recognizing what excites you about the creative journey can help you stay motivated and energized. And finally, don't forget the importance of exploration. Your creative process is not rigid. It's not a fixed system. Allow it to grow and change with you. Try new techniques, play with different mediums, and challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes the most surprising discoveries happen when we break from our usual routine. That is today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me as we explore the creative process from inception to completion. I hope you find some inspiration and maybe even a little insight into your own process. If you're enjoying Candid Canvas, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas for future episodes. So please share your creative process with me on YouTube or Instagram. And until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and remember, every masterpiece starts with a single idea.